Hello and welcome back to another episode. Now today I want to talk about something which is, well, possibly a bit shocking for some of you out there, and that is turning down 50,000 comic books. Now, I've got a friend who I grew up with who still lives back in North Wales, and he has been collecting Batman and related comic books pretty much all his life. So it'd be Batman stories to do with Nightwing, Robin, the Sirens of Gotham City, spin-offs to do with the Penguin, Joker, Two-Face, compilations of comic books, this kind of thing. He's not really a graphic novel collector, he's definitely a comic book collector. And in his collection, in his all-encompassing crusade to sort of have this Batman-centered amazing mini museum, he's actually amassed this 50,000 strong collection of comic books, and that's an estimate. He hasn't actually counted it book for book, but it's around about 50,000 comics, and it's astonishing. I mean, I've seen pictures, I haven't been to his current flat, but he hasn't actually got enough space to adequately store these comics, so they're sort of, piled up in these stacks against walls, and because they're a bit wobbly or a bit dangerous, or they're in risk of having something spilled on them, they're covered in like plastic or tarpaulins or duvets even, and it's quite something, and it's just sort of crept into his life. His whole life, his whole world at home is just taken up by this 50,000 comic books. Now he's about to get married, and he's desperate to give the collection to someone who's going to love it. He doesn't want to sell them because he can't be bothered going through and pricing them individually. Even if he sold these things for like 50p a copy, I'm sure he'd make, well, £25,000. But he doesn't seem to want to do that. What he wants is someone to take responsibility for the collection and to keep on adding to it, because it's a labour of love, it's a work of love, and I've turned that down. Now he's getting rid of it partly because he's getting married, and his prospective wife can't face the task of moving the things, can't live in amongst them in their new place. But also, just imagine if a small person came along, if a baby came along and was crushed by comics, it would be pretty bad. So I can see why they're getting rid of it, and his wife's lovely. She's not being sort of like, how dare you collect, she's letting him collect and keep all sorts of other things, and posters and stuff, and computer games and whatever, but this collection is a bit much. But I turned it down. Now this is much to the joy of my wife. She's very happy with that. She was like, I'm so pleased that you didn't tell me that 50,000 comic books were on the way here, because if you did, well, you'd have to send them back, or I'd divorce you. But it never even crossed my mind. I was never going to take on 50,000 comic books. But some of you might be going, why not? Why not? I mean, Batman is cool, comic books are cool, and 50,000 of them, And the thing is, I love Batman, I love Batman comics, and I love the graphic novels more, I think, but individual comics occasionally I do pick up. So for example, the New 52 Detective Comics number 27, when it's the free copy that came out on the 75th anniversary of Batman, I picked that up. Sometimes I go to charity shops and pick up things like, well, for example, here we have Joker Last Laugh, 2002, like 6-issue sort of series, mini-series of things. And then, I mean, here's a whole selection of just some of the comic books that I have picked up, say, from charity shops in recent months. So I do it, I do get individual comics. I get why people love them, but not 50,000 comics worth. And the reason, really, I suppose, is twofold. First of all, taking on a collection like that is a huge responsibility. I mean, especially if he wants to see it added to. I mean, I just couldn't. I couldn't commit to adding to that collection. I could possibly just about put it in storage somewhere and occasionally look at the old book every now and then, but to actually buy the new issues and keep on adding to it, I just couldn't. I couldn't face that. I just couldn't. But the second reason is because I'm a firm believer that whatever you collect, and I imagine lots of people who watch this video will be collectors, whatever you collect, it should be something that you love and that you already love before you start collecting it. I don't personally believe that a collection is valid if you just come to love something because you have been collecting it. I think you need to love something before you collect it. So for example, I have comic books, graphic novels, I have various Osborne puzzle books that I've talked about in a previous video. I've got all sorts of art books and things because I love this stuff, I always have. So that's part of my collection. I've got lots of toys, for example, on the shelves behind me. One day I made and do a video exploring those toys. I've got some more toys upstairs, most of which were toys that I grew up playing with, or which are reissues of toys which I already played with as a child. So again, I love this stuff before I started collecting. My computer games, I only really collect for systems that either I had as a child or that I just really wanted as a child. I don't really believe in just collecting games and systems because they're rare or because they're cool. So I collect for Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color by extension, the DS, the GameCube, the Xbox 360, the Dreamcast, the N64, and the Mega Drive, yes. Those are the systems that I collect for, and even then I'm not trying to get a full, complete collection. What I'm doing is I'm gathering games which I loved, or which I really wanted to try, you see. So again, I had a love for these things before I started collecting them. With computer games in particular, I think people at the moment have gone a bit nuts because, for example, the NES. The NES is iconic and it's a very necessary system, but I didn't own one as a child. I saw people playing it as a child and I was very impressed with it, and it is undeniably the origin of all of my favourite computer game franchises and characters. So Zelda, Samus, Metroid, Mario, Donkey Kong, Mario Kart, so on and so forth. It's one of the origin points for some of my favourite computer games of all time. But I don't feel a need to collect it because my love for those characters came later. So for example, with Zelda Link's Awakening on the Game Boy, I do have the NES Zelda game because I wanted to play it, but I have the Game Boy Advance version of it, the Game Boy Advance cart. Same goes for Zelda 2. So I think you need to be selective about this stuff because those people, I think they just end up just collecting because it's fashionable or because it's other people do it on YouTube or whatever. But ultimately you've got to live with this stuff, and I would argue you've got to live with it and love it. I mean, for example, all this stuff I've got in my room here, I've got elsewhere in the house, is accessible, it's useful, it's usable. I don't use it every day, but if I want to, for example, read World War Z, I know where it is, I can just pick it up, take it off to the bathroom or whatever, and have a read, and then put it back again. The toys, Galvatron just behind my head, I know where they are, and if I ever want to play with them, I can find them, then I can put them back again. You need to be able to live with this stuff. I think that's surely got to be the purpose of a collection. And 50,000 comics, I just couldn't live with it. I just couldn't live with it. And I'm sure that he'll end up finding someone who's incredibly passionate and who will give this stuff a good home. But one thing that I'm not going to do is start, I suppose, taking on stuff which I can't look after in the way that I would want other people to look after my collections. Do you know? So all the stuff that I've got, I love it, and if I ever gave it away, I'd want someone else to love it in the same way. And just having for the sake of having isn't a good enough reason. Anyway, I've sort of been yabbering on a little bit about this, but I just thought it was an interesting question. I mean, had you asked me maybe as a child, if someone offered you 50,000 Batman comics or related comics, would you, what would you do? I'd go, I'd bite their arm off, kind of thing. It's very easy to sort of get swept up in the excitement for that, 50,000 comics. But yeah, I think as you grow, or even just frankly, to be honest, especially even as a child, actually, it's not like you have unlimited funds or unlimited space and room yourself. No matter, at any point in your life, there's always some constraint on how and what you can collect. And I think the best guiding star that you can possibly have is to collect the things that you love, and to collect the things that you can live with. So hopefully this has been interesting. Hopefully you understand my reasons for not taking up my friend's 50,000 comic books. If you have any thoughts following this video, please do comment below. I'd love to read them. And I guess until next time, do take care. Bye bye.